Alright guys, so let's keep going with the Saw franchise. We have today and tomorrow to finish them. So 5 and 6, hopefully 6 I'll have out today as well before the interview with Megan, actress Amy Donald at 7:30 tonight. But let's talk Saw 5. So 2008, this is directed by, why can't I think of his name? Something Hackle. Is it John or just, I know his last name is Hackle. Don't really know anything else he's directed. If I looked through his filmography, maybe, but all I really know him for is the Saw movie. Because in 6 and 7, we have a different director who came in for that, which is that director is actually returning for Saw 10. So that gives me a little hope that it'll at least look and feel Saw 10. It'll look and feel more like the original 7 Saw films, just with him directing. So this was 2008, and this is, besides Spiral, this is my least favorite in the franchise. It's still good. I still love where the story goes, and most of the stuff with this film is all about Hoffman. Like that's where this film works for me, where it might not work for a lot of other people who love the whole franchise but don't like Hoffman as a character, I guess is the right way to say it. I love Hoffman, as I've said in the last video, that I think he's an excellent secondary antagonist here in this story. At this point, after John's dead and Jigsaw's gone, he's pretty much the main antagonist of the rest of the series here, well, at least up till the seventh film. But there's definitely a lot less quality stuff in this movie, which is what puts it at the bottom of the barrel for me. Like, if this is definitely my least favorite, 7 would probably be right above that as not too much of a favorite. And then Spiral would probably be right in between those. So those are the three bottom of the barrel of this series for me, is 5, 7, and Spiral. But I have to watch this on my laptop while I'm recording, which I don't really like doing, but the Saw franchise isn't streaming anywhere, and I'm unable to rent it right now. So I have the whole series on my laptop, so I'm gonna have to just do it this way, which means the headphones will have to stay on. But whatever, let's jump into Saw 5 and continue the story of Hoffman and Jigsaw and all that great stuff. So just a little recap before I hit play here. As of the last two movies, 3 and 4, which we know end at the same place and take place at the same exact time, the last two films. So Jeff is dead, his wife Lynn is dead, Amanda is dead, John slash Jigsaw is dead. They're all dead. And we have Hoffman's alive, and where we left off is Agent Straum reaching the building, Gideon's meatpacking warehouse, John's first property, where the game with Jeff and with Rig were all taking place in. And Straum ended up shooting Jeff dead, so now Straum is still in this location, and that's pretty much about where we pick up from. So let's dive into Saw 5 now. So we have the opening trap here, which, if I recall correctly, I'll find out in a few minutes, but pretty sure, and this is where it all really starts showing that Hoffman is making all these traps completely inescapable. That it doesn't matter what you do, or if you complete the task at hand, pun intended, you're going to die. Now, we've seen this many times already in the series, but if I remember correctly, the guy here, this is like a very early Jigsaw case that they attributed to Jigsaw, but this was all Hoffman. Because this guy here, we hear on his tape, or the videotape with Billy the Puppet, saying that he used his hands to take a life. And so he has to put his hands into this contraption, one on one side, one on the other side. And there's a guillotine pendulum that's coming down. And within 30 seconds, it's going to be able to touch his skin. Within 60 seconds, it's going to cut him in half. And he ends up, first of all, if that was the situation I was in, those are the options. Immediately, boop, crush the hands, take them. Fucking, I'm not getting cut in half. But like I said, there's no surviving this. So this is straight up revenge on Hoffman's part, and he ends up putting his hand and crushing both his hands, and he ends up pretty much screaming out like, I did it. Like I did it. Look, he's showing his hands off, and then the guillotine just keeps coming and lowering, and it starts cutting into him, and it looks fantastic. Like the opening kill here looks amazing. With the guillotine coming back and forth, and his intestines are flying all over the place, and it just you see blood spatter against like a wall or something. Reminds me of the Hatchet movies. That's like a staple in the Hatchet movies with Victor Crowley killing someone, and then you just see a bucket of blood hit a tree. Like reminds me of that. But he ends up being killed, and there was no way around it. And then I remember them saying that the jigsaw piece taken out of him was not used. It wasn't cut with a straight razor, like they've come to see in all the previous jigsaw victims. That it was used with a different type of knife or something like that, and that's one heads up and clue and tip that they get that this isn't John who's doing this. Now, why Hoffman would use something else and not use a straight razor or scalpel, whatever it is, a precise blade, knowing that that's what John used all the time, I don't get that. Like, and it was probably just an oversight, but I mean, Hoffman doesn't seem like the type of person who would, like, over just let oversights happen, that he would basically be thinking of every possible detail. So why he used something different to take that jigsaw piece, I don't know. I'm just going to chop it up to something he didn't think of. But the coroner, they find it out real quick, like when they're doing an autopsy on the body. That's it, David Hackle is the director for this. Now, I also like in this how they do address Jeff's daughter, which they mention at the end of 3. John mentions right after he gets his throat cut by Jeff and killed, he's somehow is able to push play on the tape recorder and says that John is the only person who knows where Jeff's daughter is, and that she has a limited amount of air and everything. So we didn't see any of that in 4, but then I like how they address it here and have Hoffman basically be treated as a hero because he finds the daughter. And I brought this up in the last video that it makes sense that John would tell Hoffman where the daughter is. So it makes sense that Hoffman would know, and just the way that he turns it around and makes himself seem like a hero for rescuing this girl, even though he's part of all this. I think that's very clever on his part. Like, make himself seem like a hero, even though he's the most despicable human being that there is. So Agent Straum ends up hearing a tape that was meant for him. Now, how did Jigsaw know that Agent Straum and Agent Perez were going to be coming here and working on this case? That's something I don't know. Like, we only see Agent Straum in the last movie, and then moving forward till the end of this movie. So how he knew that, who knows? Did Agent Hoffman? I'm guessing that Hoffman knew somehow, and that he knew. It seems like they knew each other, like beforehand, like before Straum and Perez came to work on the case. So I'm guessing Hoffman just knew Straum as an FBI agent and knew that they were going to be coming to work on this case. It's the only thing I can think of. But then it has to be Hoffman because Amanda's dead. So Hoffman in the pig mask, not really kidnaps, but knocks out Straum, and he wakes up with his head in that glass square, that glass box that ends up filling up with water. And really smart decision, like quick thinking on Straum's part. Like, I'll give him that. He gives himself a tracheotomy with his pen. Like, damn, man. Like, I mean, that's got to suck, like, bad. But it beats drowning to death. So for him to even, and luckily he has a pen on him. Luckily, he keeps a pen around, like in his pocket at all times, it seems. But just being able to think that rationally and not freak out and let your emotions take over, and to be able to give yourself a tracheotomy with a pen, that takes something. Like that really takes. You got to have it in you to do something like that, and I love that. I love that whole scene that he ends up giving himself a tracheotomy in order to breathe to survive this trap. Like great inclusion here. So yeah, so then we see Hoffman leaving the building carrying Jeff's daughter, and like I said, he ends up being regarded as a hero for this. And like I said, clever plan by him, like to keep looking good in the public eye and in the eye of the police and everything. And he says that nobody survived when he's asked about Rig. And then they say we got a live one, and they bring Straum out, and you could see right on Hoffman's face that like, all right, you want to play? Then let's play. Like that's the look like he has on his face, that he's shocked at first that Straum survived that, and then it just kind of washes over his face and like, all right, you're going to be more of a problem than I thought you were going to be. And I love just the whole little dynamic and rivalry between Strum and Hoffman throughout this whole movie. And of course, it ends with Hoffman getting the upper hand, and a great ending. Like that's one thing I'll say about this movie. It has a great ending and a great beginning. It's just everything in the middle, like mostly like the game being played by like these all those group of people that all their link is they had something to do with this building being burnt down, and that they all find out way too late what their connection is, and they find out way too late that they should have been helping each other instead of trying to just survive themselves. And if they would have helped each other, then they would have been able to get through this whole game. That's the biggest, weakest link for me in this movie. It's just the whole game that takes that this game, the, that this game, the whole game that takes place in this movie. It's just not interesting, and the characters are just not likable or nothing like that. Like I really like in the next movie in six, the whole commentary on life insurance policies and companies and how they basically choose who lives and dies and stuff. I love that whole part of six. This one, it doesn't work for me. The whole game, and that's like pretty much the whole selling point of the Saw series is the big game that's being played in every movie. So that just doesn't work for me here, and I'll talk a lot more about that as we keep going. Now we see Jill, who starts becoming a major character for these next few entries. And we were introduced to her in the last movie, but basically all she did was get yelled at by Agent Straum and interrogated. So this is when we start seeing just how much she does kind of know about John's work after he's dead here. And she goes to a lawyer who mentions that he represented John, and that in the case that he died, and the lawyer had no idea who John actually was, to contact Jill, and that he left something for her. Now, we know that Art Blank, was the lawyer for Jill. That was the guy with the mechanism on the back of his neck in the last movie that was in the room with Hoffman and Eric Matthews. So the whole point that the cops or FBI didn't immediately locate this lawyer and figure out that John was seeing this guy as another lawyer, and didn't immediately just swoop down on his office and just like bring him in, question the hell out of him, all of that is kind of unbelievable. Unless he was just, paid very discreetly, it was no paper trail and stuff, and this was just like a backup secret lawyer that John had. I'm going to go with that, even though it still is very improbable, but that's the best I can take out of it. And she ends up getting a box that John left for her, this black box, and she has the key as a necklace wrapped around her neck, and she opens it, and she opens the box. We don't see what's inside it. I mean, what's in the box? What's in the box? So we don't find out what's in this box for, I want to say until the next movie, but it could be later in this one. All the timelines just like kind of melt together, especially watching these so close together. But has this box, and there's materials inside of it, which we find out later are basically instructions on who she's supposed to be testing and look after, and that basically near the end of this whole story is that she has a test there for Hoffman, and that Hoffman was supposed to be killed off per John's orders after he died. So the whole thing with the lawyer is kind of weird to me. That this guy wasn't investigated at all, like especially once John was found to be dead, and they knew who he was, and that they caught the Jigsaw killer. Well, not caught him, but he was dead, and that all of that is very, very hard to believe. But it is what it is. We'll take it as it goes. All right, so then we see like this police meeting, and they're honoring all of the fallen officers that were killed and stuff as a result of investigating Jigsaw, or by Jigsaw himself through his traps and stuff like that, which we see Detective Tapp from the first film, which they're just honoring him now. Like, that was a long while ago, the first movie. So I find it hard to believe that they are just honoring Tapp and his partner. I forget the guy's name, the Asian dude. They're just like commemorating them now. Like, it seems like a long while since the first film, but whatever. And then they go on to say that Hoffman has been there from the very beginning of this case. We didn't see him since the very beginning, because obviously they had no idea what they were doing and that what they were writing towards the next movie or anything. But apparently he's been there since the beginning, and he is now newly promoted for saving the daughter of Jeff. So Detective Hoffman just went up in the ranks. And by the way, when Hoffman gives this whole speech, when he's brought up and commemorated and says that he was given a promotion, and he gives his little speech there, he sounds like John. Like, he sounds straight up like Jigsaw, like what he says. He's like, if anything, like, that we learned through this ordeal is that life should be cherished, and that, like, just everything that he's saying sounds just like something that John would say, that, like, a page from his philosophy. So the fact that nobody thinks that it's weird how close what he's saying is to what we know Jigsaw's whole idea and philosophy was, and what his work was supposed to stand for, I don't know. Like, if I was in that room, I'd be like, this fucker has something to do with it. Like, he sounds just like Jigsaw. Now, again, this is why I said I love the whole dynamic between Straum and Hoffman. When Hoffman goes in to pay respects to Perez, who in the last movie, Billy the puppet, exploded and she got all the shards in her throat and her face and stuff. Now, we know that she survives, but the head of, I think, is he the head of the police or is he FBI? The white-haired older guy. I want to say head of the police, but they basically, and Straum, faked her death, Perez, so that it would be a surprise in the next movie to Hoffman to find out that she's still alive. So good thinking on their part to make him think that Perez is dead, because Straum is just full on suspecting Hoffman, and their whole little dialogue between each other when Hoffman gets to the hospital, and Straum's asking, like, how'd you get out of that building? And he said, how did you? He said, I was on a gurney with a fucking hole in my neck. And it's like, you had a few scratches and all of that. I love that. Just the whole animosity between them, and Straum can just see through Hoffman's bullshit. And he mentions that his whole crooked department, I don't know what that line's supposed to mean. And then Hoffman says that they're all dead. So I'm guessing he's referring to Tapp and Rigg and Matthews and all that, which I could see Matthews, he was a crooked cop. But the whole line of the department being crooked, I don't know what to make of that. But then him basically telling Straum that, like, read the papers, I saved that little girl's life, and unless you have something to say to me, I didn't chasing Jigsaw since the beginning, and I got him. And if you have something to say to me, say it now. If not, back the fuck off. And he walks out of the room. Great little scene between them. Erickson. That's the head guy. And I'm guessing he's FBI now because he just told Straum, after Straum said he wants to talk to Jill one more time. And he basically tells him, like, you're off the case, Straum. Like, you're on medical leave, and as per me, Erickson, you're no longer on the case. So this is going to piss Strom off, and already visibly does. Like, he is pissed that he's being taken off this case because he knows that it's not finished, and he knows that Hoffman has to do with it, and that he's basically the accomplice. So he's in a shit situation. Like, it sucks that he's basically stripped of all his duties, and he's the only one who has this just gut feeling that Hoffman is the accomplice they've been looking for. That's been helping Jigsaw and Amanda Young. So no more FBI work for Agent Straum. Sad. And man, it must take a lot of time to prep these games. Like, it really must. Like, not just this time. This isn't the first time we've seen this. But we see, like, dioramas of the bathroom from the first movie in, I want to say, the second or third film. And we see Hoffman here come in and sees, looks at the diorama for the game we're about to see. And it cuts right to the beginning of the game with all these players, for lack of a better term, in the game for this movie. And they start off that they're tied around the neck on a cable, and they all are waking up and they have no clue what's going on, just like with every one of these movies. Now, this I always can't stand this. And I think I mentioned in one of the videos this thing that annoys me. When they wake up in any of these movies, when there's a group of them and they wake up all chained up or tied up or anything like that, like in this situation when they have their necks are tied to with a cable, and then like behind them there's like a blade that they can get pulled back into, and the one woman comes to and then looks at the other woman and says, what's going on? What did you do to me? It's like, she's in the same situation. Like, she has a thing around her neck too. Like, she didn't do anything to you. Well, like, I can't stand that in these movies. Like, when they ask those stupid questions, like, what did you do to me? Obviously, this lady didn't do anything to you. None of the people in this room did, because they're all tied up. They're all in the same situation as you. Yet you have the gall to ask this person, like, what did she do to you? Like, obviously someone did this to all of you. So I never get that line. We hear it a few times throughout the series, but this one, for some reason, it sticks out to me the most. Now, something I do love, though, that comes right after that stupidity, is the bald guy, the older guy with the glasses. He says something that I've said in one of my videos for one of these movies, is that a lot of the times, if you don't move, you're not pulling a pin or you're not starting the timer unless you like move or like jerk your head or like something like that starts the timer or starts the machine from starting or anything like that. And he says it right here. He says to the younger guy who's going on about Jigsaw and saying, this is Jigsaw, I knew this was going to happen to me, and blah, blah, blah. And one of the ladies is like, Jigsaw's dead, haven't you watched the news? And he starts moving his head around, the younger guy. And the older guy with the glasses, the bald dude, says to him, he's like, yeah, I have eyes. He's like, I would not want to be, you don't want to be moving your head around and stuff because it'll pop something out and start that timer, which is bad for all of us until at least we know what we're working with. Smart guy right there. Alright, so they start this game and they have the video of Billy the Puppet come on. And this is what annoys me about this movie the most, is, like I said, the game here. But, like I was saying in 3 and 4, like, there's different themes to the main person whose game it is. Like, Jeff was all about forgiveness and forgiving, the judge and the eyewitness and the person who killed his son by accident and drove away. The fourth film has all to do with patience and just not letting his not letting his emotions get the best of him and not rushing through an unsecured door. that's the theme for that one. This is basically just lack of communication. And from just watching Day of the Dead recently, it's a huge social commentary in that film, which Romero was famous for putting social commentary in his movies, which I've said a few times on the channel. I don't care really about social commentary in movies unless it's like a real integral part of the movie. But I watch movies to escape and to have fun, so I really don't care about that. But there is a whole bunch of lack of communication here between everybody here playing the game. So on the tape, it says that they were all born with advantages that not everybody has, and that they use them in selfish ways. And there's a connection between all of them. It says that they're all connected, and that the wires and stuff going, it connects through all of them. Now, the whole thing with them being connected, we find out later on, is that they were all involved, like I said, in this whole building that burned down. They don't know this yet. So the first thing they have to do is get the keys to unlock the collars that are wrapped around their neck before they get pulled back and decapitated. So stupidly, the junkie one, the young guy who just doesn't stop talking, which the old dude in the glasses, he already admitted to knowing the blonde girl. Didn't say how he knew her, but when we see the nail bombs in the room, they're wondering what those are, and she says, yeah, they're homemade nail bombs, probably C4 and stuff. And the junkie asks her how she knows that, and the older guy says, she's a fire inspector or something like that. Like she's seen all types of demented stuff. So he knows her, and he knows when he says the line to the junkie about, we all know what you did to squander your life, and he pulls and shows track marks on him, and he says, time to light another match, which we find out near the end that this guy was the one who burnt down the building, like who actually himself lit a match and burnt down this apartment complex, I think I want to say it was. So this guy knows a decent amount of information about some of them, if not all of them. And after a whole argument, the junkie guy says, fuck this, and he just starts racing for his key, which starts the timer for everybody. And everyone starts trying to get to the key, and the video even says, like Jigsaw says on it, or Hoffman, maybe it was Jigsaw, I don't know, like how far ahead he made these videotapes, but Billy the Puppet, we'll go with that, says that they have to work together, basically, that they're connected. And this is the first mistake here, is that the junkie guy rushes for his key, which makes them all panic, and they all run for their key, and they all get the collars off except for the blonde chick, and the timer goes off, and it tightens all the collars, and she gets pulled back, and she gets decapitated, and it looks great. Like, it really does. Like, the decapitation on her looks really, really good. And then the old guy basically says, like, yeah, we want to move away and get out of this room, like, unless you want to be here for the nail bombs going off, which is a much longer timer. I think that's like 15 minutes or something like that. And it was 60 seconds for the timer for the collars to be pulled back. So she's decapitated. They were all free from the collars, and they still have whatever amount of time on that longer clock. So let's get out of this room, the guy says. And again, smart thinking by him. You don't want to be around when these C4 homemade nail bombs go off. So then we cut back to Straum, who goes to the FBI office, and he sees Erickson, who asks what he's doing here. And Straum gives him some bullshit saying that, he's going to take his advice, take some time off, and he needs to heal from his tracheotomy that he performed on himself smartly. And then he starts looking up the case of the kill from the very beginning with the guillotine. And the guy's named Seth Baxter, and he was a murderer who got off a life sentence off some technicality, and he only got 5 years. And we noticed that there's a little hole to look in and watch the trap, like how Jigsaw always was known to watch his games take place. And we see a flashback of Hoffman looking through at Seth Baxter while the guillotine trap was going on. So Straum is starting to put it together that Hoffman is linked to this Baxter person, and that he killed Hoffman's, they didn't say it yet, but I want to say sister or sister-in-law or some family member. I know that. So he's starting to put together that Hoffman is directly related and directly linked to Seth Baxter, who was killed at the very beginning. And I think it was like the one of the first like Jigsaw traps, like second or third. They show the order of the list of kills of Jigsaw's games and victims, and I'm pretty sure he's like second or third on the list. So this kind of sheds light on how early Hoffman was working with John. So pretty damn early on is the answer for that. And I love how Straum, this whole movie is basically, besides the game, like the game is secondary, which is good for me because like I always say with these movies, I like the story a whole bunch more than the traps. Like the traps, I keep hitting pause by accident. The traps are cool. And like I said, like the decapitation in this one looked cool. The opening kill with Seth Baxter with the guillotine, that looks really cool when he gets cut in half. So like, and people know I'm a huge slasher fan, so I love practical effects. I love gore and stuff in certain movies. Doesn't always need to be there, but this series is known for the traps and for the gore and everything. That's why we have the whole stupid term of torture porn, which I'll never understand, and I can't stand that whole phrase. It shouldn't even be a phrase. But love the soap opera story more than anything with this franchise. And besides the game that's going on with the group of people with the apartment complex that burnt down, this whole movie is basically Straum's investigation into Hoffman. And I love all of that about this movie. So it's mostly just the game that weighs this movie down to my least favorite in the franchise. Yeah, Baxter was Hoffman's sister's ex-boyfriend. So obviously there's a direct link there to Hoffman, which is what Straum is figuring out and what he's going to basically prove. Like, not to anyone who can really do anything about it, but at least to himself at the end of this. This is also where we see the flashback of Hoffman cutting the jigsaw piece out of Baxter and putting it in a little test tube or whatever he keeps it in. And then we're about to see soon with the whole autopsy and the mortician talking about the razor that was used to take that jigsaw piece and how it doesn't match the incisions of a normal jigsaw kill. So back to the game participants here. We find out a little more about them. The black girl works for Department of City Planning. The other woman works for like some insurance company for real estate. The older guy works for a gossip magazine called The Herald. He's an investigative journalist. And the junkie guy is, as the old guy puts it, he's a trust fund baby. That he just has a whole bunch of money. So this second room here in the game, this is what drives me crazy about this movie and about this game here. Now, I think it is very clever how Jigsaw / Hoffman, I'm guessing it's Hoffman since he was the one looking at the diorama of this game. So I think it's clever how he words things in his videos that they see as they go from room to room. That pretty much makes it sound like there's one person that has to be left behind and die in all of these rooms. He makes it sound that way. But when we find out near the end, when there's just two of them left and they have to put their arms and stuff into the saw machine and just drain a certain amount of blood, that's when they figure out that they should have had all of them there and they should have worked together. Awesome, I like that. This whole room here, they have to look for, there's 3 keys, but there's 4 grates that open up with 3 keys. So there's 1 key missing because there's 4 of them there. So it makes it sound like only 3 of them can survive. Do you see the size of the holes that they go into when they open the grates and they can go in there for cover? You can fit 2 at least into one of those, if not 3 people. So even if the girl who got decapitated was alive too, They all could have survived this room. All of them. They could have just packed each other in two at a time and got six people or five people started, whatever. Fit all of them in there and they all would have survived this room. But yet they don't think of that. Like, that's stupid. And then the room blows up and the old dude gets blown to smithereens. He could have survived. He could have just got in one of them with one of the other people. So this is another mistake they make, and lack of communication, and just not thinking logically here. Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Hoffman a little bit ago went into evidence in the police station, and he took Agent Straum's phone, which I know he uses a decent amount throughout the rest of this movie. So he's using Straum's phone just to make it seem like Straum is doing different things or something like that. I forget why exactly he takes his phone, but he does use Straum's phone, his cell phone, for a few things going forward in this film. All right, so Straum's continuing his investigation, and he's trying to figure out when did Hoffman first meet Jigsaw. And now we're about to get the backstory on that. So now I can answer some of the questions I had in the last few videos of when exactly Hoffman started working with Jigsaw. Because we're about to get a whole scene here. We see John himself stick a needle in Hoffman's neck and kidnaps him and brings him to, I'm guessing, Gideon's meatpacking plant for where all the events of the last two movies take place. That we see flashbacks of John and Jill and stuff like that in, looks like that same location. And he's going to start his recruitment on Hoffman here in the flashback. Now, that whole scene of the flashback of John talking to Hoffman and recruiting him, basically, absolutely love that whole scene. Love it. Like, all the dialogue between John and Hoffman, and him having Hoffman in his own little makeshift trap, which is just a shotgun right under his head, right under his jaw, with a rope tied to the trigger. And him basically saying that, like, John knows who Hoffman is. He knows that he killed Seth Baxter because he killed Hoffman's sister. And that John knows what it's like to lose family. Obviously, he's talking about his son Gideon with the miscarriage. And knowing that Hoffman's sister was his only family. And that despite him killing him, Baxter, Hoffman's not a true killer. And that's his dilemma. And he basically gives him a choice and says, do you want to, arrest me right now? And he says that they call me Jigsaw. You're supposed to be looking for me and you're supposed to take me in. So you can either arrest me and take me in, but I know who you are, and I know that you murdered Seth Baxter, and that information is where it has to be, or you can join me and learn a valuable way of rehabilitation that will allow you to sleep at night. And I love the little line too that he throws in, saying, "Your pendulum was inferior, and that if he really wants something for the long haul, you want to use tempered steel." I mean, cool little bit of info, but that guillotine, that pendulum, seemed to work just fine on Baxter. Like, I don't know how inferior it was. It got the job done. It cut that motherfucker in half, like, real easily. So I don't know how inferior it is, because it did a great job. But it's great to be able to see this whole first meeting between them. And then we see Straum, who ends up saying and asking himself, did you help Jigsaw with everything, like from the beginning, with all the kills, with all the traps? And that's what it seems like it was. Now, we find out that Seth Baxter, that Hoffman used Jigsaw's MO to kill him. So this is a very, very early on case within this Jigsaw case, like the whole death of Baxter. This, when they show Straum looking through like the document that shows all, like, I'm guessing it's in order, because Amanda Young is like the third or fourth one which makes sense. And Seth Baxter is right around there, if not before Amanda. So he must have just read Hoffman. He must have just heard in the news or by investigating the case one or two, maybe three traps from Jigsaw tops until he thought of the idea, I'm going to set this up like a Jigsaw trap and I'm going to kill this bastard who killed my sister. So this is implying that Hoffman was with Jigsaw from pretty much the very beginning, which answers some of those questions that I had in earlier videos. So he was with him since the beginning, basically. So I'm going to guess before, I'm going to guess what I guessed in the last video or the video before that. That Hoffman joined him either right after the events of the first movie with the bathroom with Dr. Gordon and Adam, and was with Jigsaw working with him from the second movie onwards. Now, unless I hear something going forward that says that he was with John before the events of the first movie, or like from the bathroom trap and game that Adam and Gordon played going forward, then I'll have to retract that. But for now, I'm going with from the second movie onward is when Hoffman started working with him. So then we get a nice little manipulation of Erickson from Detective Hoffman, that he ends up calling Erickson and saying that, and Erickson admits here that he's new to the case. So he doesn't know all the theories that Straum had, that there's an additional accomplice to Jigsaw and Amanda Young. And he's basically trying to bait information out of Erickson to see if Straum told Erickson that theory, which he has not. And that's when Erickson says, but I'm new to the case and stuff. So Erickson says to Hoffman, like, that Hoffman asked him to have Agent Straum contact Hoffman, like, at this earliest convenience. And Erickson says, why don't we reconvene in the morning and talk more in the morning? Erickson then goes to the evidence locker and he notices that Straum's phone is missing. So this is where I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that Hoffman is trying to plant in Erickson's head that Straum is the accomplice working with Jigsaw and Amanda Young. God damn though, man. Every time I see the contestants of Hoffman's game, just again now when they come back to them, it just pisses me off every time I see them, knowing that they could have fit all four of them in those holes. And them saying, like, would that guy, even though he was an asshole, he was pretty intelligent, we could use him. And then the other woman saying, like, would someone had to die, would you rather it have been you? Fuck all you guys. Like, you could have fit him in there with you guys. Oh, it drives me nuts. Okay, so Hoffman's been working with John since the very beginning. Like, as we see Straum checking out the room from the first movie in one of the flashbacks, where we see that the big overweight guy who went through the barbed wire and ends up dying through that, Straum ends up theorizing to himself, like, how'd they get him? Like, how'd they kidnap him? John was a cancer-ridden, patient. He was very weak, and Amanda wasn't recruited yet. So how did John kidnap this huge guy? And then they show the flashback of John trying to get him in the pig mask, and he fights John off. Then Hoffman is there, and he stabs the guy from behind, and that's how they subdued him. So that implies that Hoffman's been working with Jigsaw since the events of the first film. So he's been there the entire time. So good to finally get confirmation on that. All right, so a lot of questions that I had from the second movie onward are being addressed here, which I don't know why I didn't remember a lot of this. Like I said, this is like one of my favorite franchises in horror, but I don't watch them back to back to back often at all. I think maybe a year ago or so, I actually marathoned them, like 1 through 3 one night, and the next 3 the next night, and the next 3 the next night. That was, I think, the only time I ever watched them back to back to back. Now, I started with the first Saw movie for the month like 3 weeks ago, so these haven't been back to back, but I am watching them in order, obviously. So I don't know why I forgot a lot of these details, but we see Straum again saying that Hoffman, got all the police files for from the people in Saw 2 that were all in that game in the house with Eric Matthews' son, and that Hoffman was the one who planted all those police evidence files and stuff and the arrest records for all those criminals in Jigsaw's little warehouse that he was in, with the elevator that took him and Eric Matthews down and out of the place, which is so stupid that no one was patrolling there. But he planted that evidence. And then I mentioned in Saw 2, my video for that, that we had Abi, that guy who kidnapped the blonde chick. And I said, I understand having more hands. If you can get Abi to kidnap these people, well, why not do it? He's going to die anyway. But we see Hoffman here kidnapping Abi. So, answers my question from Saw 2 that Hoffman was indeed at least working with John at that point. Now we know more so that from the very beginning. And so Hoffman is the one who helped collect all the people for Saw 2 for that game. All right, back to the stupid contestant mice in the cage. So they get to the third room, and again, there's hints here that they all should have been working together and get through this together, because there are five, what the hell do you call them? Like clips, like electrical clips and stuff like that. And there's a bathtub. So someone has to get in the bathtub, and there's five clips, which there should be five of them. All working together to link the circuit, and it'll open the door. Otherwise, an electrical circuit, when the timer runs out, will sweep through the room, short circuit the door, and it'll be shut forever. And totally forgot this, that the black woman's talking and everything, and she's telling the junkie guy to get in the tub, and they're going to connect them all to him. And he's like, oh, you're going to kill me too? And then the older chick, the brunette, she just stabs the black girl in the fucking neck. And she's like, I just didn't trust her. So they throw her in the bathtub, and they link everything together, make the circuit, and the door opens. So now there's only two of them left, and they still haven't put it together that they should have more of them here. So we have Jill, who ends up coming to Detective Erickson and saying that she thinks that she's being followed, and that he said it sounds like police work. And she said, no, I can't go to the police because it's you guys, it's the FBI. And she says that she's pretty sure it's the detective who interrogated her, meaning Straum. And so this is this planned by Jill? I'm pretty sure it is. Like, this is part of some of the documents that's in the box that she was given by the lawyer to help make Hoffman's story stick, that Agent Straum was the accomplice working with Jigsaw. And then we end up seeing Hoffman using Straum's phone to call Erickson, and he sees Peter Straum. He picks the phone up and says, Peter, where the hell are you? And Hoffman hangs right up. So he's using his phone to make it seem like Straum is still around and that he's calling Erickson. And Erickson's starting to really believe this now, that Straum is the accomplice. So, I mean, it's all going to plan pretty well for Hoffman here. Then we see a flashback from the third movie when Jigsaw is laying on his deathbed, and before Lynn wakes up, the doctor, and they have a little talk between John and Hoffman, saying that excuse me, that he needs Hoffman to start a new game, meaning the game from this movie, and that it's not going to make sense to him right away, but they're all connected and it's part of something bigger, and all the jigsaw pieces are going to fit together. So then we see him going through the files of the people in this game that are playing the game in this movie here. Alright, so then back in the game here, this brainiac finally figures it out, this woman, that all five of the keys from the collars, same key, same lock. So they just needed one key, and it would have opened all their collars. And then in the next room, that they all could have fit in those in the holes. Like, yeah, thank you, lady. Like, you're like a half hour, 40 minutes, way too late. But she figured it out. And then with the bathtub, that it was supposed to be the five of them holding a cable each, and they would have suffered a small shock. So, and it's all brought up from the junkie guy in the last room here with the box with the saw blades in them, that there's five holes and there should only be one. They're thinking that each one should be eliminated, each person should be eliminated as each room goes on, and there should be just the two of them left the way that it is. He gave them all the tools right from the beginning to work together and survive this. So this goes against a lot of the things in the past that I said were probably put together by Hoffman, and that he never really gave them a chance. Now I'm guessing the reason for this is that this was still John masterminding this. Like, he had this whole game set up in his head and the details all set up and stuff. So Hoffman basically was just following John, which would give them a way out of this. So it does make sense, even though it is Hoffman's game that he put this whole thing together, it's still coming from John and his philosophy. So it makes sense. So the saws start revving up in the box here, and he starts saying, Jigsaw, on the video, that hopefully you learned that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, which, no, they did not learn until 2 minutes before this video started. And that the human body is such an amazing creation, and that it's very durable, that it has 10 pints of blood in our bodies. There's 10 pints of blood, and the human body can survive with half of that, so 5 pints. So they have to, and he says in the video, it could just be one person, but you have time. You have 15 minutes, and then the doors will be locked forever, and the bombs will go off, just like all the other rooms in this whole game here. So the woman says that it can either be one of us and lose all 10 pints of blood and die, or we can both put our hands in there and we can lose 5 pints each and survive. If they had all five of them, they'd only have to put in friggin' 2 pints, and they would have been fine. But I say a lot with the traps in this series that, like, ones that aren't too hard to figure out how to beat and everything like that. Like the stupid one in part two that the girl puts her hand in to get the cure, the antidote for the nerve agent, and then she stupidly puts her other hand in and gets stuck. So stupid. But this one would be hard, man. Like, can you imagine having to stick your hand into a fucking saw, a circular saw, that power saw? Like, no. Like, I couldn't imagine that. The pain that you must feel. Oh, I can't picture that, man. Like, I don't know. At this point in the game, I might die. Like, I might not be able to do it. Or, as terrible as it might sound, just knock her out and put her arm in there and have it drain like the 10 pints and walk out of there free man. Like, obviously, I'm kidding a little bit. But, man, that's got to be hard to do this. And this is when we find out the link between all five of them. Is that, and a little clever that it's called Saw 5 and there's five people in the trap in the game. Little clever there. I like that. But we find out the link between them, and that the junkie guy flat out says, he's like, he was given an ounce of heroin in order to burn down an abandoned building, and it turned out not being abandoned, that there were 8 people living in there, and that they all died, and that the feds got involved, and then he got off through his father, helped him get off. And that's when we find out that the woman here left alive works for the planning department of real estate. The black chick worked for the city planning board and everything. So they all were related and linked to this fire that he caused that killed these 8 people. So all of them were involved. All of them were responsible in one way or another, and that's why they were all being tested in this game. Then we have Straum, who's following Agent Hoffman into some warehouse building, and we're going to get such a great ending that I love with this. I got to say, with this rewatch, I don't dislike this movie as much as I remember. Like this rewatch maybe made this movie bump up a little bit. Like Spiral is probably now my least favorite. I have to rewatch 7 to see, but I'm gonna make a guess here that it's Jigsaw. Did I say Jigsaw? If anything, it's Spiral at the bottom, and then 5 and 7 tied. Once I watch 7, I'll be able to judge which I like more, 5 or 7. But yeah, my feelings on this movie went up with this rewatch. Like it's basically an origin story of Hoffman and how he started with John, and then just all the stuff with Straum and Hoffman. I adore in this movie. Basically, it's just the game itself, which luckily, I mean, out of an hour and 50 minutes, hour and 40 minutes or so movie, maybe we spend a half hour, 35 minutes with the people in the game. So it's not like it's the majority of the film. So maybe that's why it went up a little bit. But I'm surprised on this rewatch for sure. And the whole scene with the two of them putting their hands in the machine and getting their hands torn up with the saw looks great. Like, and you even see like a Friday the 13th Part 4 Jason hand split, like whenever their hands are split in half there. The effects look great in that. And we see Erickson has also followed Strom to this location, and he finds a cup of coffee that's still steaming, that's still hot. So he knows that the accomplice is here. And then we see Strom go into the room that has a glass box. And he has a tape that he plays from Hoffman saying, like, have you learned to trust me? And that I'm telling you that the only way out of this room is in that glass box. And pain will be incurred, but you'll live. And Hoffman ends up coming in, and Strom just does not trust him and beats the living shit out of Hoffman and throws him into this glass box, thinking that he finally got him trapped. He's trapped Hoffman. And then we have Erickson who gets there. He finds the girl from the trap, and she's saying all bloodied and everything, her hand, and she's like, "We won." So she won the trap. She gets to live. Same with the junkie guy. I'm guessing. I don't remember if we see him again. I'm pretty sure he survived too, unless he just died from his wounds. I don't know. But Erickson is looking around that whole little area with the monitors that was looking in on the game, and Erickson calls Strom and hears his phone ring right there. So Hoffman planted his phone, so it looks like Strom was behind this, and there's even a folder with Erickson's picture in it and a few pictures of him, even more cementing that Strom had a hand in this, that he was the accomplice that they were looking for this whole time. Man, what an excellent ending. This is one of my favorite endings in the series. Like, so good. When we have Erickson calls in an APB on Peter Straum, on Special Agent Straum, and he's now the suspect, excuse me, as the accomplice. And we see Straum in the room after he throws Hoffman into the glass case, and he doesn't heed the warning that he got when he first found at the beginning of the movie and found Jigsaw's body there and played the tape and said that, you know, this place could be your sanctuary or it could be your grave. Like, heed my warning. Like, stop now. And then the music kicks in, which is just, as I keep saying in every one of these videos, the theme music is just amazing every time you hear it. And then you get all the flashbacks and stuff, which I always say, God, editing one of these movies has got to be one of the hardest jobs imaginable. Editing all those quick cuts and everything like that. And just the whole way this ends with Hoffman in the case and in the box, and it just starts going backwards, and Straum is freaking out and shooting at him, and it's bulletproof glass, and the box just ends up going right into the ground, level with the floor. Then the walls just start closing in, and Straum just starts like trying to get to the top where the gate is. There's like a grate at the top, and he tries escaping somehow. and he just ends up getting crushed. And like as soon as he's holding the walls as they're getting closer, and right here the bone snaps out of his wrist, and the blood falls down onto Hoffman on on the case right that Hoffman's in the box. Looks awesome. And then just the sound design too of just every bone in Straum's body being broken and just like to dust as the whole and the last shot of just the walls closing in with Hoffman in the case with all the blood that's falling from Straum's body covering the case, and it just closes on Hoffman's face and boom, and what a great ending. And like I said, this I was surprised how much this was not as bad as I always remembered. I never thought it was a bad movie, but my least favorite in at least the original 7 films. But it went up on this rewatch for sure. Like it definitely did. So I mean, David Hackle, great job directing this one, and just the whole origin story of Hoffman and how he got involved, and that we find out is from the very beginning, and then just the whole cat and mouse game of Straum and Hoffman, and all of that I adore about this movie. It's just the game, which, like I said, it's not even like half of the runtime, which saves it for me. If the game was a major part of this movie and it didn't have all the Strom Hoffman stuff, it would still be pretty low on the list in the franchise for me. But that's Saw 5 from 2008? Yeah, 2008. So it is 4 o'clock. I'm probably not going to get 6 out because I have the interview with the Megan actress at 7:30, so 3.5 hours. I like to prepare and stuff before that and relax a bit after doing a video here. So I'll get this video up. It'll be up probably within the next hour. And then we got the interview with Amy Donald, who plays Megan, which I'm very excited for. So tune in for that, absolutely, especially if you're a fan of the film. And I will probably watch and have Saw 6 up after the interview. So sometime later tonight. So the video will be up late tonight, aka early morning, 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. So great movie. Not on the same level as the rest, but still great. So wherever you guys are from, hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or night. And I will see you guys from the Megan interview, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.